Hi, I'm John Nunziati. I'm on the NIRI San Francisco chapter board, and I'm here today with Richard Marshall from Korn Ferry. They've recently done a compensation study for investor relations, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the takeaways from that survey and also a few other topics. Richard, great to have you.
Great, thanks John. Pleasure to be here and pleased to talk about what we saw in the study and also some of the other trends that we're seeing in investor relations today.
Excellent. Well, let's start with the study. What were some of the key takeaways?
Yeah, well, just by way of background, we've partnered with NIRI over the last few years in doing compensation studies every couple of years. So the last one that we did was the end of 2016. And a couple of the key takeaways that we saw. First of all, the base salary for IROs is increasing. So the good news is it's increasing on an adjusted basis about 7%. We're also seeing that the total compensation packages are increasing as well. So the good news over the past 2 years is that it's getting, the compensation is climbing. The other thing that I would say is that we're finding that there still is a pay gap differential between male and female IROs, but the good news on that is that's beginning to shrink a little bit. So that's a positive sign. The third thing I would say is that we're also seeing that the scope of the investor relations role and the strategic value of the IR role is continuing to increase. We did a separate survey that was a subset of what we had done with NIRI that focused on Fortune 500 IROs. And again, we're seeing that the scope of the role is getting bigger, the strategic value of the role is getting bigger. So I think these are all positive signs in terms of what we've seen in the study so far.
Thank you. That sounds great. You mentioned the pay gap, the gender gap coming down a bit. I know that's a subject of interest to many of the chapter members. Mm-hmm. We have seen a study recently that suggested that somewhere in the range of 2/3 of the top IR roles are held by men. What do you think needs to be done to change that composition?
Yeah, it's a good question and it's an important one. I think that as more transparency is seen around what is happening here, I think that will change. Drawing on some of our experience, recent experience, we did, if I'm looking at the last 8 IROs roles that we have placed, 50% of those were female. And these were for mega cap companies, also for some turnaround spinoffs, tech. So it's a small subset, but I think things are going to begin to change. And I certainly know that in the clients that we work with, both CFOs and the heads of HR, diversity is a very important consideration, and it's something that we're mindful of and organizations are as well. So I think as there's more focus on that, I think things will shift.
Great, thank you. And interesting on the more recent placements that you've done, what are the CFOs telling you that are the key characteristics that they're looking for?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think typically when we're working with CFOs, the things that are really important and what we're hearing now, I would put in the category of sort of shifting from functional mastery to broader strategic and leadership skills. Okay. So the basic blocking and tackling of IR obviously is critically important. It's a challenge now given the marketplace dynamics. But what CFOs are really looking for are candidates that have a strategic mindset. I think candidates that can bring a broader sense of collaboration, that can work inside the organization, that can reconcile where there may be differences of opinion and how they architect a narrative or reshape the narrative. And I think also people that have a broader business sense. So again, not just functional skills, but also a broader strategic capabilities in terms of thinking about how the business operates, makes money, and what are the important issues that they're dealing with. So it's important for CFOs to see that candidates can bring more than just the functional skill set, which we call sort of table stakes now. It's really sort of elevating it up. And that's a common theme that we're hearing from CFOs.
Excellent. And then maybe you could give us a little bit of advice in terms of how investor relations professionals should be thinking about marketing themselves to positions like this.
Yeah, also a very good question. I mean, I think as IROs are thinking about their own skills and growing their career, I think one of the things that every IRO should be doing is staying current with what's going on in the marketplace, always looking to sort of tweak and retool their skills. But it's also about thinking about yourself in terms of your own brand. And I sometimes say that you're the CEO of you. And I think that IROs really can begin to think about marketing themselves. And I don't mean in a shameless way. It's really about what are the broader skill sets that you have? How do you present yourself? What are the gaps that you have? How can you grow those in either the role that you have now, or perhaps by volunteering or working with leadership to take on things that may be challenges that the business is dealing with, and they need somebody that's a problem solver. So by adding value, by inserting yourself, by helping to collaborate and bring things together inside the organization, I think that will raise your profile, it'll tweak your skills, and I think it'll put you in a good position to grow your career.
Excellent. Well, before we wrap up, any other advice that you might have in terms of investor relations professionals, in terms of working with firms like yours, or assisting in their search?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. Again, it's a very dynamic marketplace. I think I'm very bullish on the profession of investor relations. I think there's a lot of concern right now about whether the profession is being diminished. In some cases, that may be the case, but I think the boards and CFOs really do, if they're smart, see the value of what this can bring. Now, they may not know it, they may not know how to define it, but I think that they see it, and certainly when we're doing assignments and we're bringing talent to the table that may shed a different light as to how this can be a really strategically valuable function, most good CFOs are going to see that and implement it. So I think for IROs that are thinking about their career, it's best to continue to stay focused on the functional mastery, but grow your leadership skills and grow some of those other skills that will make sure that you have a seat at the table and are viewed as a strategic value-add business partner.
Great. Well, Richard, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you at an upcoming NIRI event. We have a great schedule of activities over the course of the upcoming year. I think the next one will be a networking event in September at Lucky Strike Bowling in San Francisco. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thanks, John.